I will depend on the opinions of other people to take a decision. And a lot of times, people have misled their leaders who have taken decisions in all good conscience, believing that they were given the right information. And those decisions have turned out wrong because the people had their hidden agenda. You take me to housing. I mean, the portfolios have already been shared. Ministers have been taken, so this is not like politicking again. But I just want to drive. There's hardly anything you will say about housing. Before you even come to me, you'll have to work extra hard because you know that, like I just said, when I'm going to brief Atta, I have sleepless nights because this man knows more than me. So that alone sends you back to work hard.
Okay,
Mr. Oni does not seem to agree to some of the things you're saying.
The problem with technical people in ministries is that they tend to have what we call limited field vision. The administrator sees bigger. He has a global view of these things. So, look, you have to.
I think Mr. Oni is getting.
Let him land.
Let's be clear on this. You do not need to be an architect, a builder to head a housing ministry. What you need.
Why can't we
what exactly is your objective? What exactly is the political objective? The man, he has a view or he has a vision of what needs to be achieved, and then you send experts. They bring all manners of submissions. Yes, I agree. For instance, that in a ministry like in a Ministry of Justice,
yes,
you need a lawyer.
Okay, because.
So why in solid minerals you don't need a
but
no. Let's get that of health.
In health,
yes.
Professor Lambert was not a doctor. He was an health economist. Most of these professions you are seeing, they have so many subspecialties. I do not believe that a minister, somebody who has worked, who has experience, I tell you today, if you are taken to a ministry that probably you don't even have a kind of background in, if you are committed, in 1 week you will have an idea of exactly what goes on in that ministry. You call for submissions on those kind of things. It can be done. I don't think that's a hindrance or an inhibition to their performance. They are there to lead a team. The team is already there. There's a government program, and theirs is to drive the men to achieve those programs. I do not think it's
what I was trying to correct here is that, Mr. Oni, where I'm coming from, I'm taking the precedent of his own words. I am not trying to say you can. For example, I'm a developer. I didn't read architecture. But sometimes when I'm on the field of my architects, they're under a state of shock when we are setting out houses, because over a period of time, I have gotten to know so much about it. And by the time I was made a commissioner in Delta, I didn't have any background in budgeting. But the kind of commissioner I was the one that oversaw building of almost everything. Do you understand? Because it was the Oil Development Area Commission. I had to learn a bit of budgeting. The ministers had to drive the policies. The president referred to them as noisemakers, but now I know he knows there are no more noisemakers the way he referred to them. They are to drive the policy. If you have to drive the policy, what we are saying is there are certain ministries that are too sensitive. If you want to drive the policy, like for example, we're going through a very critical period in the life of this country, where fuel is even being sold at 140 naira in Delta, 150 in Benin. It's only in Lagos where we're buying at 87 naira. What's even the actual landing cost of fuel? It was reduced from 97 naira to 87 naira. We have a Minister of Finance now, who today should know that it is not rhetorics that we're going to use to solve this problem. I keep saying it. Our banks are going to recession. They're already retrenching. If you don't know, that's the truth. I know you know this, having your background in the media. We have a situation in the country whereby they reduced credit reserve ratio to 25%, and yet the banks are crying because of the TSA. They said they don't have deposit. They are looking for deposit. So even if you have 100 million naira, it means 25 million, you cannot touch it. Even if somebody fixes 100 million naira. And you know what that means. So you have only 75 million naira available to the bank to be able to trade with. They are not even able to give out loans. What we are saying now is we are looking for alternative source of income. And the president has said it. 2 areas we can earn income is agriculture and solid minerals. Yes, you give it to Audu Ogbe. He has his experience in agriculture. I don't think Fayemi is well suited for solid minerals. I would give Fayemi any day, anytime foreign affairs. He would be perfect for it. We all know that. What we are saying now is that the president talked about square pegs in square holes. It's not about you or your views now. Yeah. I agree with you saying that somebody who is a novice in an area can come and his zeal and the impact he will make can drive the policy in that ministry. But the president has said, look, I'm looking for square pegs in square holes. He didn't give us square pegs in square holes.
Okay, let me bring in a comment from a viewer. Ikmosa Humabi says, educational background is not necessarily the true or only test of good administrative competence. He says the level of exposure is key. So in the case of Dr. Fayemi, for instance, he's in solid minerals.
Yes.
We need to diversify the economy. We're looking at both agriculture and solid minerals.
Yes.
But he, as you said, is an international, he's more versed in the international aspect of international policies and all of that. But we need the international community to buy into our solid minerals. We need them to invest in our
I'm happy
minerals.
you anchored the program when we talked about solid minerals. You both anchored that program. And we spent about 30 minutes on this. A lot of people were shocked at the deep knowledge I had in solid minerals. But could you compare me to the professor that was sitting right here that day? You remember how the professor went into details, not only details. You remember how he took us into history. When we were even talking about exclusive legislation that stopped the states from actually harnessing their solid minerals, and we're saying that they were docile. And he said it wasn't even only about being docile. Just take your mind back to that program. Even after that program, I looked at that kind of professor, and imagine this kind of professor making him a consultant. You remember I said it, making him a consultant to the Ministry of Solid Minerals. Where to take us to?
But you so imagine that Dr. Fayemi reaches out to
except that wouldn't that work to happen? Except he has to reach out to that kind of consultant, and he has that issue to drive. But what I'm saying, I'm not saying he will not perform. I'm still taking the president on his own words.
Okay.
I'm indicting the president on his own words. But let's get me wrong. It's an indictment.
Let me exonerate him.
It is. The president did not put square pegs in square holes.
Let me give my perspective to that understanding of square pegs in square holes. One is profession. The second is capacity and nature. What that means is that, look, we are looking for a system where the right-minded people come to drive that system.
If he had put it that way, just the way you put it, we wouldn't be.
Okay, now,
it's semantic. The word you have just used. If he had put it, if the president had put it that way, I would have been more comfortable. I know of people that have the zeal to drive a policy. I know of people that have the zeal to, like I was giving somebody an example. I'll give you a little bit of an example. Where in my commission, we were on percentage, and I probably had 4%. And I was able to build a glass house. And somebody was like, how were you able to do this? I said, even my governor then did not understand. It depends on who sits on the chair. I had to cut my coat according to my cloth to be able to achieve that. Do you understand? I would ordinarily not have been able to build that glass house if I had made other areas my priorities. So it depends on who sits on the chair. Like for Fayemi, for example, we won't take it away from him. He's a man that has the zeal. And right now that Nigerians are critiquing him, I know he would go an extra mile to make sure he drives the policies.
So for that, he's a square peg in a square hole.
So would this mean that it would have been better if during the screening, some of the
portfolios already
minister designates, had the portolios attached to them, and then
square on it. The portfolio should have been attached to it during the screening. I don't know why this policy. In America, if you are nominating the secretaries, you nominate them with their portfolios even before you understand. You nominate them with their portfolios. It's strange that in Nigeria we nominate ministers, they go for screening, we just keep guessing what their portfolio. Everybody had given Dambazua defense. And the president surprised us and took him to interior and brought Dan Ali, who we didn't think would have the experience that Dambazua has. What we know of him is that he was instructor in the NDA, and he was the commander of the 32nd Artillery in Akure. That's all we know about Dan Ali. But you see, the president might know much. Also, let me be honest, the president might also have a deeper knowledge of these people than we do have. So I also concede when it comes to that. But when he comes and says, he indicts other governments to say that they did not put square pegs in square holes, and visibly putting people who are not related in subject areas.
In your view?
Not in my view, it is obvious as a fact I'm reading on the table. Do you understand? Then we must also accept that he did not put square pegs in square holes. That's where I'm coming from.
Okay, Mr. Tok, you mentioned before we came on, you talked about finance, and this is where
What did I
talked
say?
about it. We're in dire straits about
Before we came.
about the economy. Hold on, before we came on,
So
we talked about finance. So,
finance.
let's look at the issue of the economy and the financial situations in Nigeria.
Yes.
The person there, Kemi Adeosun, was a former investment bank chief, and she's the finance minister. With the situation that we are in now, the naira against the dollar going south and all of that, how do you think that would all come together?
I wish I didn't have to.
Although we might have to tie that to solid minerals, to agriculture, and all of that,
and housing, But the issue is, I'd looked at 3 people in that cabinet. I'd looked at basically Elenaman. I'd actually looked at him. Before,
why did you look at Nelema? Because in the conversation we had in the office, some other people had mentioned him. But why did you look at Nelema?
If you look at his stature and background, relative to somebody who was a commissioner of finance, okay, I am not a finance person, and I will not want to talk with so much authority.